Welcome to the Journey to Happy podcast, a podcast dedicated to women who do too much, who think too much, who worry too much, who prioritize everyone too much, who neglects herself too much. This is a place for you to hang out. We get you. I know exactly who you are. That used to be me. There is another way of going about life, and that is what I've dedicated this podcast to, teaching you a way in which you can be incredibly caring and compassionate and helpful, but without sacrificing your own well-being. My name is Olga Lacroix. I am a former therapist, a life coach, a coffee lover, a wife, blissfully a mother, and I am your host. I'm excited that you found this podcast, and I cannot wait to see you inside. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Journey to Happy podcast. I am excited, very excited, to be sharing this episode. And you'll notice that this is being released on an off day, not my regular Mondays. And that's because this week is International Infertility Awareness Week. And as somebody who has been through infertility myself and continue to, I thought it was very, very important that I finally did a podcast about my own story beginning to end. And I have a special guest who actually walked with me his journey because it impacted him the same. And that's my husband. So say hi.
Bonjour tout le monde.
We're going to do our best to, as naturally and as simply as possible, share with you our story with the hopes to give you hope. And honestly, what's in the back of my mind is to give you a better understanding of the differences between his views and her views through the same journey. If you are brand new to my podcast and you're just catching this as your brand new podcast, if you are brand new to my podcast, I want you to know that as a life coach, I coach women who do all the overthinking, all the overworrying, but also a big chunk of what I do is supporting women through trying to conceive, infertility, pregnancy after infertility or after a loss, as well as anxiety postpartum. So it's important for me to create this type of podcast to support that side of the community that I do serve and that I walk with on this journey. So, well, you guys know me, so I'm not going to continue to talk about me. I'll let my husband just briefly introduce himself and tell us who he is other than my husband, which is what really matters in this podcast. Just a quick, my name is, and what do you do?
My name is Chris. I'm married to the lovely Olga that you all know very well. Been married for coming up on 7 years. I'm a local Ottawa real estate investor, real estate agent, and family man.
He is a father to my son, or at least that's what we believe. You guys know that Mateo was made in a lab, so we always joke that if he came out looking nothing like us, we'll just still raise him as our own. That's our ongoing.
Good thing he looks like me. So.
He looks almost too much like my husband. Before we got into this blissful place of being parents, we struggled, and we struggled quite a bit. And that's what we're hoping to do openly here today, is to talk to you about our struggles so that, one, you don't feel alone, and two, you get to see our perspective, because I do feel that we were really hopeful and positive throughout these struggles for the most part.
Yeah.
We got married when we were 27 and 31 years old. I won't tell you who's older.
You just did.
And immediately we started trying to conceive.
Yep.
And 2 years went by where nothing happened. Not even
a scare.
Like nothing. Like every 28 days, my period will just come exactly as it was expected. And obviously we, at that point, thought that we needed to look for help. And I am very much a holistic human, and I absolutely love to do the least intrusive, the most natural of all things possible. And so we started with a naturopath doctor that you guys, I've interviewed her. She's in the podcast, Dr. Prakash. And we also saw Dr. Singh, both of them having interviewed, and they are in this podcast. You'll be able to find my interviews with them. And they helped us prep our bodies. They helped us with preliminary testing. We looked into our food intake, into what was causing maybe inflammation. What?
Plastic. I woke up one morning and everything that was plastic in the home had vanished.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say that I probably could graduate with a PhD on fertility and what kills eggs. And plastic is one of those things, ladies. So if you're listening to this and you're struggling with infertility, looking at your environment does help. Plastic is one of those things. So initially we had the naturopath doctors helping us. We saw a nutritionist, or that came later.
No, we did all the things that we could do naturally to try to improve our chances,
and not like the naturopathic doctors. And at that point we had consulted with our local fertility clinic, and they had told us there's nothing wrong with either one of you. One way or another, you will be pregnant, but we don't know why it's not happening. So we were diagnosed with unexplained infertility. It's not to say that I was hoping they would find what was wrong with me and that there was something wrong with me, but having answers eases the anxiety and it gives you solutions. But unexplained infertility, what it did to me is that it gave me false hope, because I thought, well, if there is nothing wrong with me, then we'll keep trying naturally and we'll delay the looking for help. We traveled quite a bit before COVID, and we happened to had gone to my homeland, Colombia, and to Peru to visit one of my brothers. And at both countries, I don't know if you remember, yeah, we went to see fertility experts, because obviously, I'm sure this is true to everybody. We kind of feel that in my homeland, the doctors are better and they're going to be able to find something that here in Canada they didn't. And the Colombian doctor said, you are going to need IVF. Remember?
He also owned an IVF clinic, so I was a little suspicious of his recommendations, but that was the first person to say, you may need some help.
Yeah. And maybe a year later in Peru, the fertility expert said to us, no, I think you can get pregnant. In fact, you're ovulating, as she was doing this ultrasound. And we definitely did the homework. When we came back from that trip, that was the first time that I saw 2 lines on a pregnancy test. But unfortunately, we also had a pretty severe virus that we caught.
We almost died.
It was like an hepatitis, but it wasn't hepatitis. Like it was something
to do with our liver functions, had elevated markers, and we had to go for blood work every second day while we're trying not to puke all over the place. So
yeah, fun times. Needless to say, my body completely shut down. That pregnancy was short-lived, very short-lived. And after that, I think we became more serious about looking for help. We went to our local fertility clinic. They suggested that we did an IUI, which is definitely a less intrusive step before IVF. And we did it. And 2 weeks later, I started bleeding. We knew it hadn't worked. And then they called me from the clinic to confirm. And at that point, we looked at numbers and we thought we could continue to do IUIs. That's like the tempting thing to do because they're not incredibly expensive.
Yep, about 1/5 of the price.
Yeah, but their success rate is just not as high. And the words that made me want to do IVF was the doctor explaining to me why IUI hadn't worked was the sperm and the egg didn't go to the same party. They just didn't meet at all. Do you remember you saying like, that sounds like us. We wouldn't be going to the same party.
I mean, it's true.
So to me, that was just like not, if I'm already going to be going through, I'm not suggesting to anybody listening, if IUI is what you're attempting to do, that you don't do it. And I've coached several women who have had a successful pregnancy with IUI. Is when I realized it didn't work, I had the option to do more of the same or to go for something that in my mind felt a little bit more, let's make the egg and the sperm go to the same party. Long story short, we did our first IVF here locally, and we had 4 eggs retrieved. We've always had 100% fertilization, all of them fertilized, and only one made it to day 3. And so we had a day 3 transfer, and I had given a name to this embryo, Pochito, which is like, what do you call a baby chicken?
A chick.
A chick. In Spanish. And so, I went from an egg to being a chick to like being my baby, hopefully. And might have been a week and a half after that transfer, I specifically remember waking up at 4 a.m. and just feeling like that presence was gone. And I remember waking you up and I'm like, it's gone. And you were like, that's insane, you're crazy, you're overthinking, that's not, let's wait and see. But I knew in my heart it had sunk. And so anybody listening to this, I would say, trust your body and your intuition. It's incredibly accurate. And I am also a very anxious person. So I know that you might be thinking, how can I trust which is my anxiety, which is my intuition? Intuition doesn't give you anxiety. It's just a very strong knowledge. I just knew. And needless to say, I ended up losing that embryo. And to this day, as I think about it, I get very emotional. That was very sad. Part of our journey. And was that sad for you?
Not as sad. I think we just come at it with different points of view, and although unfortunate, I'm a very methodical, calculated person. So I said, this is the first step in whatever amount of steps we need to do to have a child. So yeah, I was more logical about it. Obviously, I'm not the one carrying, so I think different emotional attachment, but definitely sad at the result, for sure.
I think this is a really good point that you bring up. We feel things differently. First of all, we have the hormones in our body that makes everything feel strongly. But also, for anybody who's had a miscarriage, the actual physical part of the miscarriage, it's so sad.
Well, you experience it.
Yeah, you literally no, it's gone. It's not like a one day symptom, it's so we talked about that I was going to cry in this podcast, and here I am. And this is just the beginning, guys. I will cry more. When we went to the clinic, it's part of the IVF process that after the cycle doesn't work, you go back to see your doctor and kind of talk about next steps. And we were so ready to go for next steps.
Yeah, that was not the experience that we expected.
No, I had done all the thinking of okay, so maybe next time they're gonna do something differently, and I had a list of questions to ask the doctor of all the things that I thought maybe we could do differently. We went together to that appointment, and the doctor said, you have low egg reserve and you respond poorly to hormones. You're not a good candidate for IVF. We won't do any more treatments. You should consider adopting.
Yeah, that's, like I said, not what we were expecting.
Not what we were expecting. Needless to say, you just heard me cry. I was in instant, sea of tears. This guy over here got up and left. You remember that? You didn't even let me finish that sentence. You got up and left.
I just found it was not necessarily my reality. Just, I didn't, I didn't think that was our truth. So I was open to a second opinion.
But you got up and left. You didn't say bye, thank you.
Yeah. Anyways, it wasn't a pleasant experience.
Were you angry?
No.
Just that doesn't belong to me. Well, it's almost like we had then communicated telepathically or something, because I did cry, but I'm a very proud person. I was a little mad that I cried in front of this doctor, that I gave him that much power. But before I left, as I was picking up my purse and putting on my coat, before I crossed that door, I told myself, not this doctor and not anyone is going to tell me when and how I become a mother. And it's not because we don't consider adoption. We are quite open to adoption. But like Chris says, it didn't feel like this was his opinion, didn't meet my intuition. I wasn't ready to say, oh, okay, we're done with trying. Like, he had no idea our personalities.
Some would say we're stubborn.
We're stubborn and persistent and determined, and
they mix terribly well together.
So I left that office. Were you surprised that I left calm, that I wasn't so disappointed?
No. I know who we are, and I didn't think what he said resonated with you.
And it didn't.
Yeah.
We did some research. Somebody in the fertility forum suggested that I talk to this doctor, Dr. Ari Baratz, who works out of Toronto. Toronto is 5 hours drive from our city, Ottawa. And at first, I almost didn't even reach out, because I thought, what an inconvenience.
Well, yeah, it's a lot of man hours for sure.
However, there was only one fertility clinic in our city, so really our chances were to go somewhere else.
And that clinic has an 18-month waiting list.
The local one, yeah.
Yeah, the one in Ottawa. So whether the experience is pleasant, not pleasant, they've got a waiting list. So service, we found, could have been better elsewhere. And it was. We contacted Dr. Baratz.
We've been lucky since day one.
Our first call was on Canada Day.
Canada Day, which is a holiday. He was working. And also it was 2 weeks after my referral was sent. And, or even a week after. And on August, we were going to a clinic to do a million tests that they hadn't done in our local clinic. One of which was a hysteroscopy, where they found 2 polyps in my uterus, and he thinks it's likely why a baby wouldn't have grabbed onto the walls of my uterus. And after that, we did a round. He suggested, because I do have low egg reserve, lower than a woman my age, he suggested that we did something he calls batching. So for me, it was minimum stimulation, because I didn't respond well to the ovaries. And it meant we would retrieve eggs 3 or 4 times in a row, and we would only transfer once after testing these embryos. And so what I love about Dr. Baratz is that on our first session, not only was he incredibly caring and human and heard the whole story, he told me straightforward, this is not going to be easy, but I believe we can do it. I think you're not at the stage of egg donor or adoption. So this guy spoke my language. I'm like, that agrees with me. And I trusted him. You liked him too right away. I think that was important.
Yeah, I mean, he was into yoga, and you guys had an instant connection. So I mean, that definitely helped.
And he was into hockey, so you guys had an instant connection.
Oh, he's from Toronto, so he cheers for the enemy.
Yeah. So we did 3 rounds in Toronto, back to back to back.
3 consecutive.
3 consecutive, yeah. So every 2 weeks I start a new cycle of IVF.
Starting or finishing.
Yeah.
2 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
Yeah. What was I thinking? I had such a strong desire to become a mom. There was nothing impossible for me to do. There was no sacrifice. There was no pain I was not willing to experience to meet my baby.
Well, just tell them, just scheduling wise, how that worked out. Every time you started a cycle, every 2 to 3 days, you had to be in Toronto.
Yeah.
And you didn't stay there for a week because you had no, you came home the same day every time.
Yeah.
Your parents drove you.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I took the train, I took the bus. I drove, my parents drove me, you drove.
You would fly out at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
You would go to the airport around 3. And maybe 2 hours after I woke up, you'd be back through the door. You had flown in straight to the clinic, ultrasound, blood test, whatever it was, and you're back home at 11:30.
Ready to work.
Yeah.
Because I did not stop working. I was still coaching and showing up. And I think that's something that is very important for women to keep in mind. We're stronger than we think. And for me specifically, it was very, very important that I kept my mind on other things, not just on fertility. I needed to do that. Because I had postponed already so much in my life for when I became a mom, or just in case I was pregnant, that I felt it was very important to keep up with it. So it was not easy. It was not easy. It was not cheap. It was very expensive to do all of these rounds. And if you add the cost of traveling, I think by the time...
a flight was about $600.
Yeah.
When it was a good price.
3 times a week. It adds up.
Yeah. On top of the IVF, that's a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there. Yeah, it's not a cheap endeavor, but if you can make it work, gratifying if you can get to that result that everybody's hoping for, which luckily we were.
Yeah, there's no guarantees.
And we know that, and I think that's why our view second time around is different.
Yeah, so you guys are listening as we currently have just finished another round of IVF.
Well,
and we have an embryo in developing mode.
The first one since Mateo was born,
yeah,
which was almost 2 years ago.
Yeah. So one of these batching IVFs gave us a healthy embryo. We ended up with 3 embryos in the freezer. All of them went for genetic testing.
Which is very low. We ended up with 1 embryo per cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that ended up being Mateo, you almost canceled.
Yeah.
Tell them about that.
Yeah. So the one that I made Mateo, quoting my doctor, my ovaries were underperforming, which they are already underperforming at all times. So that was really bad. That meant he upped my hormones and there was 1 follicle growing. By the time they retrieved Mateo, there were 3 decent follicles. There were actually 3 eggs retrieved. 2 were not mature. So there was really only
and 1 was like 6 times the size. I had taken all the meds. I said, nope, you guys don't need this, which describes our son's personality.
Yeah. And I just want to say for those listening, if you are stock up on numbers, the numbers are so deceiving in IVF. We have heard stories of women who have 21 eggs retrieved, out of which only 4 fertilized because there were only 4 mature, and out of which 1 gets to be healthy. It is natural selection. And I've always understood natural selection. We're not intended to have 10 children or 21. There's natural selection means there is the best, and the best comes through. And so it's supposed to be 1. My doctor said to me, Olga, I could tell when he walked into his office, he had a really sad face. And I'm like, oh no, this is not good news with that 1 cycle. He says, you really have 1 follicle. What do you want us to do? At that point in Canada, anyway, they can cancel and you get refunded for whatever money you've paid. other than your meds. So you don't have to pay the full cost of IVF. I did not even call Chris. I didn't even call you to consult with you.
No, you had told me that you had given him a go ahead to continue. But I think that's because you believe that would be my reaction, which it was. Like, you mentioned that, and there wasn't even a thought of questioning the decision or getting upset or anything like that. It was just, well, that's obviously the only answer.
I said to the doctor, this could be my heart of gold. We're taking him out. Like, I've come to Toronto at that point. I had been like, how many times? I'm like, you're taking this egg out. Like,
which turned out to be the only
healthy one,
genetically sound embryo out of three cycles.
That was our son. So intuition, I'm just gonna say, follow it. Don't let fear make you doubt what your heart is telling you. Ladies, that belongs to you. Your husband follows your lead. They don't know what we know. We just feel feelings that are so intuitive and attached to what being a mom and a woman is all about. Mateo was conceived. He was then transferred 2 months after. I did give my body 2 months to decompress from 3 rounds of IVF. And I cannot recommend that enough. That was life-giving. It just brought me back to recognizing my body and losing some of the weight I had gained, just feeling like me again. And for us to have some couple time, I had been like traveling so much, and the whole subject I feel we're talking about were baby. And so where did your mind go?
Just it was very methodical, and it felt like a chore. So it's not super exciting.
To have sex? Is that what you're talking
about? Just in general.
I wasn't talking about that, but I'm glad you brought it up.
Hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Guys are guys.
Yeah. So 2 weeks after transfer, we found out that we were pregnant.
Yeah, that was a surreal moment. I'm the one that looked at the answer, right?
Yeah.
You pee on the stick and you ran away.
I was so anxious. I pee on that stick and left to clean my kitchen. Okay.
Like, I had to go find it in the bathroom.
And so Chris asked me, do you remember what you asked me?
Well, again, remember, this is after the genetic testing. So 3 rounds, we ended up with 1 embryo, meaning 1 chance. This is it. If this doesn't happen, if this doesn't stick, that's it. Like, that's, it was just very final, good or bad. So it was a nervous moment for sure.
Hey guys, it's me interrupting your podcast for a moment to personally invite you to work together. If you are a woman who has been overthinking for far too long, if you're feeling a little exhausted of your own mind and just want to have a break, I want you to take that break too. If you want to know how to stop overthinking things or the past, how to stop worrying so much and find that perfect balance between caring and taking care of you, prioritizing yourself. If you feel that your perfectionist mindset is taking the best of you, you find yourself procrastinating on the things that are good for you and really focusing on the things that are not really serving you, like worrying about what others think of you, worrying about people's judgment of yourself. If you've got weak boundaries because of your own needs of being accepted and not rejected, and if you worry about people's perception to the point that you have disconnected from your own identity, from what you like, from what you want, that underlying anxiety caused by overthinking, taking things personally, and carrying the loads of everyone's issues in your own shoulders, hey, I'm speaking to you. I want to get you out of there, my friend. I have been you. I know what it's like to be that woman. I know what it's like to be so sensitive and caring and impacted by the things around you. and wanting to keep it all in balance while not actually getting personally negatively impacted. I get it. Been there. There is a way out of this. There is a way for you to live life with healthy boundaries, have really strong, powerful relationships where you get to shine through within your power. It's possible. I do it. I am a living proof example of that. And so are my coaching clients. For the remaining of the year, 2021, I've got 4 spots available for one-on-one work. And if you're listening to this in the month of April, I have just opened a second cohort of my most powerful coaching program, group coaching program, Becoming the CEO of Your Own Life. And as always, you can join me inside Reset Your Mindset, the membership at a really low cost, all of which is available to you. All you have to do is make a decision that life that you're currently living can improve if you just make that choice. So I would love to see you. I would love to support you. I've got a variety of services. They're all in my show notes. You have all the links. Browse around, or you know what? If you actually want to talk with me for 15 minutes, you can book yourself in and we get to have a discussion about what program will suit you best. But from the bottom of my heart, I want you to know that the life of the overthinker, of the person who worries too much, who gives too much, who neglects herself too much, does not have to continue. Just because that's all you know doesn't mean you have to keep there. You know you can do better. I know you can do better. So let's work together. You've done the self-books, you've done the therapy. It's time for a change. Life coaching is for you, and I am excited, genuinely excited to help you navigate through whatever it is that you're going through. Talk to you soon. Oh, I'm gonna ask you so many questions about that because, guys, this guy keeps always such a strong face to me. Like I know you've mentioned to me your job is to protect me, and I think that you really own that protector mode. Do you like what were your like? It's past now, so you can tell me what were your raw emotions? Like even that transfer. I remember a transfer. You were listening to music, and I was mad at you. Like, give me the music. I'm the one who's going through this, and you said to me, this is also happening to me. This is also my last healthy embryo. This is also my last chance of becoming a biological father with you. And I felt like you were just, I felt that that was such a strong reality that I hadn't been thinking this was happening to you because it felt so much like this was happening to my body, in my body.
Yeah, I mean, the physical impact is not the same for the guy and the girl, but yeah.
What were you feeling at that transfer? Because I know I was super excited. I'm nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I was very hopeful, but yeah, hopeful.
I'm usually a confident person, but I was definitely more nervous just because the news we had gotten for fertility had never been great, right? Like you just, at a certain point, you get beat so many times, you just start to expect that as your reality. So felt like an uphill. The odds were not in our favor, but very hopeful. But like I said, on the other hand, I expect good things to happen to me, to my family, to the people around me. And I think they tend to do so, yeah.
And so on January something, I was gonna say January 26th, but I think that's when we found out that we were pregnant. I don't remember dates for
I think it was the 19th.
My life. Yeah. So yeah, I tested earlier. I'm not gonna lie. I did a P test because I started having symptoms that I had felt during the IVF that didn't work, and I just couldn't take it. I'm like, I'm gonna put myself out of this misery now.
Is that the one that we found out?
Mm-hmm.
That was the test?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We tested early, but the results were
still positive. And then I carried this baby. I carried this baby to almost full term. He was 38 weeks. And he was born?
Yeah.
39 weeks. Because labor was 4 days long.
Yeah, we were expecting him around the 14th of October.
Yeah.
He was born on the 7th.
He was born the 7th. And a funny story is that I didn't like the date 14th because I love the number 7. And also because the 14th was Canadian Thanksgiving. And I so wanted my baby to be already at the party of Canadian Thanksgiving.
In the middle of the spread.
So I wrote it in my calendar, October 7th, the day Mateo was going to be born. And like a witch, I made it happen.
That you are.
At 3:26 in the morning, he was born, even though I was hospitalized on October 4th. So really, he was born on October 3rd. No.
Yeah, the Saturday.
On your grandma's birthday, on the 4th. Because I remember your parents had to leave her party to come to the hospital because they came anyways.
Okay, I remember something different, but
So how was it like for you, my pregnancy? I know for me it was nerve-wracking. I can definitely expand on that. But
which part?
All of my pregnancy. All of my pregnancy.
Oh, the first 3 months were a little nerve-wracking, just because of the stats. It's very high risk in the first 3 months. If you're to lose a pregnancy, that's kind of the danger zone. And I remember specifically one weekend we went to a cousin's gathering in near Saint-Sauveur with my family that I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember specifically hitting the beautiful roads of Quebec, and we just hit a pothole, and it gave such a punch, such a shock that I got scared. I'm like, what if that, dislodged or the baby? I was very nervous in and around that time, and we had a scare.
Yeah, I went to the bathroom like any other moment, and then I see a pile of blood, like right.
This is a few weeks into the pregnancy.
Week 7. And it was terrifying. The only other time I had seen this is when we miscarried. So I called Chris into the bathroom. This is like maybe too much information, but I just couldn't even say it in words what I was seeing. And I remember you went, you I don't say fell, but you went down on your knees. Like, it was like you were holding my hand. You didn't know what to do. It was terrifying. If you've ever had a loss, being pregnant on its own is a trigger for your anxiety. And seeing blood obviously will send you off to the worst place. It was late at night.
It's not what you're expecting, so it tends to mean bad news. So
what was that like for you? Because you kept it pretty together for me that night.
Well, doesn't help to have both people freaking out. So I think you have to be strong for your partner.
Was I strong for you?
I don't think you're supposed to be.
No?
No, and I'm supporting you. It's not the other way around. What are you supporting me? My emotions?
Yeah, why not?
No, you're the one physically carrying a child, so it's about, yeah.
So if you look back, I was not supportive of you because
it's not that you're not supportive. That's not what this is. It's a moment where you're vulnerable, you're impacted,
it is this feeling that I was explaining before, like it's happening to me, and I think you feel like this is happening to me. I remember you saying, I would just feel so sorry for you if we lose this pregnancy. And like any other time, this comment would have make me a little bit upset because you're sorry for me. What about you? You're losing this baby too. But I knew what you meant. You were like validating all the stuff that I had to do that you didn't get to do. Like the injections, the travel, the lack of sleep, the mood swings. the inflammation, like all of that I had to experience. Okay, maybe you, why are you laughing?
The mood swings.
You experienced that?
Yeah, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Just Teflon.
Going back to that night where we were bleeding, where I was bleeding, where did your mind go?
Well, obviously not in a great place. Expected the worst, but hey, you went for some tests, and
That was the first time we saw Mateo. Second time. At 8 weeks, they sent me in for another ultrasound because I was bleeding, and there it was, a little bean with the fastest little heart ever. And I remember calling my mom and telling her, I feel like he's so cute. Like, our baby's cute. We knew he was a boy from the beginning. Even before we knew if I had gotten pregnant, we asked for gender reveal, and we knew that
because we paid a fee
yeah.
to make sure the embryos were genetically sound, which included knowing what the baby was.
Yeah. So he had a name from day one, Mateo, and we have called him Mateo since he was microscopic in size. That bleeding was terrifying. It ended up being that my placenta was bleeding out, nothing to be worried about. One of the things they had given me for the transfer was blood thinners, because we never knew why. I had never kept a pregnancy. It is assumed that I miscarried many times. I just didn't know. And so he thought, we're gonna give you everything, including in case there's a blood clot disorder that they couldn't tell with my blood test. This is what they're giving me. So they discontinued that, and I stopped bleeding, thankfully. And Mateo grew big throughout my pregnancy. He always measured older than what he was, and I had anxiety my entire pregnancy. And it wasn't always related to the baby, but I knew I was so anxious about everything else. And anything that I knew it was definitely the stress of potentially losing the pregnancy and losing our son. And it didn't help that everybody around me was so anxious that I would lose the pregnancy. Like, everyone was hyper vigilant of me.
I mean, you flew to Nashville.
I flew to Nashville while pregnant, and people around me were freaking out. And it's okay. Like, I realized then that everybody had been suffering with us, the absence of our baby. Like, everybody wanted us to have a baby, and they were like, please don't move. Chris, you used to say, I'm going to wrap you in bubble paper, and just like, so that
bubble wrap you?
Well, yeah, so that nothing happens. If you're talking to another guy who's supporting their wife going through infertility or through IVF, what kind of words of advice do you have after having gone through 5 IVFs yourself?
I just think you need to be there for your partner. It's you don't control the outcome, but I think you can have a say in how you feel about it. So, like I said, it's our experience ended up with a very positive result. That's not going to be everybody's reality, and so just be hopeful and be strong for your partner.
What was the hardest thing about being a male partner, having your wife go through IVF? Like, what did you find the most challenging part about supporting me or being around me or like being a part of this?
The mood swings?
What mood swings?
No. No, I mean, there's definitely some hormonal change, especially with the therapy and the injections, and that has an impact. So you have to take it with a grain of salt for your relationship's sake. Things will be said, but anyways, you have to remember who your partner is, and just be
patient.
Yeah, Patience
and,
for sure
and
helps.
take nothing personally. Chris, I sat down twice throughout 2 different treatments to tell Chris that I wanted to leave him. I wanted a divorce. It was a done deal. And I even thought he was going to tell me it's because of my hormones. So I mentioned this is not related to my hormones. I write it down and this is what we're doing. And each time he would tell me, I hear you. Let's talk about this once you don't have hormones in your body anymore.
Yeah.
And the next morning, guys, I'll be like, oh my God, what have I done? What have I said? So I would, check in with Chris, like, so how are you feeling about what I said yesterday? And he would answer the same. We'll talk about this we never actually talked about it because we didn't need to. But I am forever thankful that you were not taking that personally. And so I do think that it is a factor that hormones could make somebody think differently.
So maybe have that conversation with your partner. Just to know that, because certain guys, me included, like if you had not included me in how this was going to impact you, I could have just been like, what the hell? This is not normal. And so I don't know, just have the conversation and
I did do that.
It's a possibility.
Yeah, I did do that. I did tell Chris, like, it's possible that I'm going to become a different person. And I was experiencing day by day. I mean, I had reactions like hysterically crying because they didn't have a bagel. Do you remember I called you from a parking lot, like, couldn't even talk? You probably thought I got into a car accident.
Yeah. Like very hurt. No, just not the food item that she was looking for. What a tragedy.
Which I am celiac. I don't eat gluten. And
we found out the hard way.
Yeah.
Explain what we did after every appointment.
You can tell him.
So Olga has an intolerance to gluten, borderline celiac, potentially celiac, who knows? Haven't done the official tests, but after our first cycle, every appointment, as a treat, we would pick up a Kelvin's bagel at Lansdowne, which we turned out that gluten had a devastating impact on you.
My body.
So, is that why it didn't work the first time? Who knows?
We kind of blame it on the bagels.
They were delicious.
I did 23andMe genetic test. We both did. And I came up as having the gene for celiac, which really met pretty much all the other symptoms I've been having, from eczema to digestive issues, and the list goes on. And so when I said that to our fertility doctor, he said to me, there is a lot of correlation in between unexplained infertility and undiagnosed celiac disease. If you have the gene, doesn't mean that you have the full-blown condition. The problem is that they couldn't test me anymore because I've completely eliminated gluten. So it would still give like false results. So we've assumed for all purposes that I am celiac, and that's it. My existence with gluten has ended. The pregnancy, so you were stressed out the first 3 months. Did that go away as you saw my belly grow and as things were like?
Oh yeah, after the first trimester, it just felt like, okay, now it's just getting ready for, having this little person that you're responsible for. It's when you have a baby, a certain part of your life finishes and a new one begins. And that's a very real reality. So, yeah.
On October 7th at 3:26, at 2 a.m, after having been hospitalized since the Friday, and I naturally started labor the Monday before that Friday. So I was contracting on and off. I was dilated 4 centimeters by the time they hospitalized me. And turns out that our son decided to turn his face and look where he was going to go out. And so he got stuck because babies need to be born head first. So at 2 a.m, my doctor came in to tell me that the baby was stuck in the birth canal and that we needed to do a C-section. I had been pretty calm and collected up to that moment. Like as happy as I was that they were finally taking him and they were gonna get me out of this misery of like contracting and nothing happening. I the only times, which is several, that I've been in surgery has been emergencies and life or death kind of scenario. So my brain just went to complete anxiety. Did you freak out?
No. You had been trying to negotiate a C-section from the time you stepped into the hospital. So I was like, enough. So finally, when you got what you wanted, it was, I don't know, I just expected that was how he's going to come out. And that's how he did. So, I mean, I wasn't freaking out, to be completely honest. We're in a hospital. We're surrounded by professionals. Like, even if something bad happens, like, you're in a place where you'll be okay. So, I don't know. Something bad happening was not even on my radar.
But earlier you were saying that thoughts cross your mind of like all the research, all the stories, because I do coach women who have had stillbirth, and you have heard me talk about this. Like,
oh yeah, like the moment he was born, felt like a huge weight was lifted, just because of the area of coaching that you tend to specialize in. You've heard all the bad stories, right? Weren't you editing a certain podcast of someone that had lost a baby at 38 weeks?
Yeah.
And the difference was she felt less movement.
Yeah. Which is exactly what I was experiencing too by the time they hospitalized me. The reason that I was at the hospital a week earlier is because I felt Mateo move less, and they did an ultrasound. He wasn't practice breathing. And so they decided to induce me. What did you feel when you heard Mateo cry for the first time when he was born?
Relief. Yeah, cried instantly.
You cried. You cried like I've never heard you cry before. I thought you were laughing. Like I stopped crying to look up to you and be like, are you laughing or are you crying? And you're like, crying.
Probably both.
It was surreal.
I laugh when I'm nervous. So, but yeah, definitely relief. Just for everything that we had gone through, that you had gone through, to know that, he was in our arms and safe and breathing. No better feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and complete happiness. I mean, yeah, my little dude, man.
I said I was going to cry again, and I knew it was going to be here. I think of Mateo listening to this podcast at some point. Mateo, if ever you hear this podcast, I just want you to know that we encourage you to do hard things, because great things can come out of that. And for any of you listening to this and thinking like, wow, how lucky they were, we worked so freaking hard for that outcome, and we were discouraged by professionals to do this. And did you ever feel in your heart like there was a child waiting for us?
Well, like I said, I always expected to be a father naturally, and that was just what was meant to happen. So I don't know. I've just always expected a certain outcome, and knock on wood, it's paid off.
Yeah, I did. I knew we were gonna I knew my heart. It's almost like I wanted to reunite with somebody. I don't know, it's the strangest thing, but I at one of my doctor's appointments, I told the doctor my favorite sound was to hear Mateo's heart. And he said to me, no, that's not the best sound in the world. Waiting to hear him cry for the first time. And holy shit, was he right? It was loud sound of criers in that room. All three of us were crying. I'm thinking of questions that I get asked by clients that I coach. And there's often, women feel often like their husband are not as emotional, or that they don't care as much, or that they're not making as many efforts. Like they don't want these as bad as they want it. How do you feel about that? Was I the driving force here?
I think you were. I mean, our potential outcome and our options were, traveling great distances, and I don't think everyone is willing to do that. So, yeah, I would say you were for sure the driving force.
And I have to say, I agree with you. I was the driving force. And I
mean, it takes two to tango, but...
Yeah, but I do think that this is important to talk about because...
But it also started when I said to you that I was ready, right? Like there was a definitive moment where up until that point, I wouldn't necessarily say that I was ready for that new...
That's a really good point. But like for the woman who's listening to this and thinking like, but my husband is not like, he doesn't feel this urgency to like, we're running out of time, man. Like, let's get on with this. You guys are more nonchalant. Like, do you care? Like, I even wonder if you love me. I'm like, do you care enough to make a baby with me? What's wrong? Why can't you just show your emotions the way that I feel them? And I tell women all the time, we process emotions very differently. Women, we need to talk. We need to be heard. We need to like think of all the what ifs. Whereas I'll let you talk, but I found you almost never went to the what ifs. You were always like in this IVF that we're currently doing. Let's wait to see if we have any eggs, and then we think of next steps.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just
share the man perspective in this emotional journey.
Well, it's not a man perspective. It's just my perspective. Why suffer the downfall of the emotion, right? Like when you list out all of the different things that need to happen for us to have a healthy embryo that we can transfer, we're already starting with one or two, right? It was we retrieved 2 eggs this cycle. Both were not mature. So thankfully, because Brett Create, they had an incubator. One was able to mature, fertilize, and
yeah. I personally think that it's a great balance to not have both people in the relationship be freaking out or equally emotional. I know a part of me wanted Chris to be more like worried and like, interested in like what else, like, reading the books. I've read all the books, and I just share with you the information. Like, you were receptive to listening to the information.
Well, for sure. And it's not to say that a guy wouldn't be interested. It's just we have a certain dynamic, and I trust you, and
what was I going to say? Yeah. So I think that for the ladies listening, it's okay to have a different approach and even a different sense of urgency. We literally and physically run out of time, and that is felt at a cellular level in our body. It is a ticking clock that you feel. Whereas, like you and I were talking earlier, you were saying you've always known you can parent until 75. You could become a parent. So just not having that.
Yeah, it's not final. And I think a lot of the frustration or the emotion that you were going through was about seeing, a likely end sooner than later. Whereas, a guy doesn't lose the ability to have children.
Yeah.
By, in the next 5 years or 10 years or whatever.
That's right. What else can we offer to a couple going through IVF? Somebody who's in the thick of it. Like, let's just remember, like, our hardest times, like when we were really like afraid if this was going to happen. Not only that, the financial stressors. Like this can be stressful at so many levels for a couple. And I mean, we went through a hard time ourselves. I've been open about that in the podcast, that we even consider not being married. I mean, that wasn't throughout IVF, but still while we were trying to conceive, and I became so like, it's gotta happen. And you're like, I don't know if we're ready. Like, what can we tell couples that are listening to this that could give them like insight or hope for their relationship? Like, what happens to their relationship?
I would just say to develop a certain level of patience, right? Put water in your wine. It's a relationship is hard enough as it is. When you add this element, right? This stress, and it's not anybody's fault, but it's a reality that has an impact on both. Yeah, I don't know. Just
I would say that doing other things that are not fertility related was fundamental for our marriage and for my mental well-being while going through IVF, even though it consumes so much of my time with adding the traveling and like the hormones that will, like the headaches that then will take me away from doing things. I made it a point to commit to the things that nourish me as a human. And I think that helped me not stay in the sadness or in the fear of what if I don't become a mother. I just didn't want to stay there long. That's when we had the most amount of fighting, when I was in that state of like, if this doesn't work, I will just be in panic mode, and then I'll have less patience. I will have less tolerance to just go through life and less ability to be there for you as just a regular wife, like just doing things. So I would say that, and I did go see a psychologist at the time, and that was very helpful to me as well. She said something that it changed, that changed my perception. She said infertility is the most difficult, perhaps the most difficult thing that you will ever go through. And that gave me permission to have compassion with me for what I was going through. Because somebody said to me, this might be the most difficult thing you've ever done. And I'm like, that feels about right. Like, I want this so much, and nobody can guarantee it. You don't know Chris and I, but we are hard workers, and we believe we have the personality that we work hard for it, we get it. And infertility proved us wrong. We worked hard for it, and we were not getting it, and there was no guarantee. So that shifted that part of I think, our personality, like that showed us something that we hadn't experienced before, where it wasn't no matter how much work we put in. One last thing that I think we can share with people is like your biggest lesson throughout this journey. Or what has been? What did you learn the most?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, in the infertility, in Mateo's birth.
Both?
In the infertility, it's just be strong, be hopeful. Because that's all that you can do.
What do you have to say to Mateo when he hears this?
That I absolutely love him. It's a feeling I could have never described before hearing him cry and seeing him for the first time. It's absolutely love him.
So I think the difference between men and women is that I felt that love before he was even a possibility. Like, to me, meeting him was the best day of my life, and continues to every morning when I hear him call me mama. It's like pure joy. But I loved him this much. And I think this is something that the woman carries, and that's why we are the driving force. we feel that love. And like, Mateo, I loved you. I loved you when you were a thought in my head. Remember, I used to cry thinking about when we have babies. Like with this level of emotion, I could almost feel that energy of like who he was going to be and what he was gonna do to our lives. So I think that's a gift, ladies. That's a gift that we have, that we can connect to almost the spirit of our babies before they're here. And that's why we climb the mountains. And let me tell you, being on the other side now, sort of, I don't regret anything. I don't regret anything. I never look back and think like, oh my God, I wish I had put less progesterone because it hurt so bad, my bum, or that I had done less travels to Toronto because it was a pain in the butt. Like he was worth all of it. So my best wish for all of you is your rainbow baby or your baby, and that you get to hold that little child that comes to you one way or another, and that you get to share your own story with the baby. We gave Mateo, his middle name is Ari, because personally, I'm gonna cry again. I'm gonna be
Shocking.
indefinitely thankful to the doctor who believed this was possible and made it happen. And I want, you know how you always talk about your middle name and it's got a meaning? Like, I want Dr. Baratz to be mentioned in Mateo's life for the rest of his life. And so that's why we named him after Dr. Baratz. Because I think he should be wearing a cape. He's my personal superhero. He laughs when I say that because I have said it to him. We just finished our last IVF. Well, we have determined that it's our last IVF. Do you feel differently about this IVF than the previous 4?
Yeah.
What's different?
That no matter the outcome, this is our last one.
Yeah.
So it means for sure we're not having 2 babies, 2 more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no guarantee that we're having 1 more.
Mm-hmm.
So,
why is that different? We've never had that guarantee before.
No, we had never said this is it, right? Mm. So I think we both come from families with multiple children, and that's what we wanted for us. So even after Mateo, we still intended on doing this again, which is what we're doing now, but we've also given the results and already what our story was before. That's it.
So you think she would be lucky enough to have this embryo be healthy, genetically healthy, and it goes into a pregnancy, and or not a pregnancy, sorry, a transfer that didn't work like the first one? Will the emotion be different than the first one? Because I feel that you were very much like, oh, it didn't work, let's move on. Whereas I had like a lot longer.
Well, no, this would be different because this is our last shot at our genetic makeup, right? Our Mateo 2.0.
Yeah.
Right? Not that Mateo's absolutely perfect. So it's just, our second child.
Yeah. I feel a lot more peaceful than I did with the previous 4 IVFs with this one. And I think that's partially because I've got Mateo and he's my universe.
Yeah, we're thankful.
We're thankful. But at the same time, when they told me they retrieved 2 eggs last week, and they called me the next day to say none of them were mature, my heart sank like meters underground. And I realized that day, I didn't know how much I wanted a second baby until then. I knew I wanted a second baby, but when I was facing that possibility that this was our last IVF and it might not work, I realized that, this will hurt if it doesn't work. Which is what I tell my clients often, like, we can't prevent hurt from happening, but we can love the process, and love is what also allows us to remain open to any possibility. Like, it might work, it might not, and that I think is what gives me a peace of mind. for this one IVF. I promise you I will come back and share with you what ended up happening with this IVF. We should hear in the next few days if the embryo continued to develop to day 6, and if it did, we're also going to genetically test it. We understand our chances of having a genetically sound embryo are very low, especially when having just one. But I believe in miracles. I believe in miracles, and my best wish for all of you is to believe the same. We experienced one. There is no reason why we couldn't experience another one. Any last thoughts?
No.
A man of few words today. Today, I should say.
Tonight,
because God, he can talk. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that this gives you an insight into the life of a couple with infertility. It's not easy. Not every story ends like ours, which is why we feel incredibly blessed. But I am also convinced that, like you used to tell me, no matter what happens, this is part of our story. And I think that honoring your story, whatever way it comes, it's a very resilient and healing thing to do, to just honor your path, whatever path is there for you, to honor that and to think that that is yours. You can't change your story. It's for you to cherish. From my heart to yours, thank you for tuning in. I would absolutely love to hear from you. So if you're listening to this, if you are struggling with infertility, if you need support, please reach out. I would absolutely love to walk this journey with you and give you all my mindset and mindfulness tips that help me and continue to help me as I'm walking through this journey yet again, to stay sane and healthy. Talk to you guys soon.